So here's what I got so far on my little solenoid powered HitnMiss engine. I've got the Arduino Nano control board over here hooked up and plugged in. I've reprogrammed it. So far I've only got one of the potentiometers hooked up. I thought about this a bit, and the timing adjustment I don't think is so important to have on a potentiometer. It's pretty easy to adjust it with the Hall sensor cam here. And really, because of the way a solenoid fires, I think firing it right at top dead center probably makes the most sense. There's not much point in having it fire before that, because it's just going to work against it, and because the solenoid comes on relatively instantaneously. So I'm not going to mess with that for now. The other thing I was going to adjust with the second potentiometer was the amount of milliseconds that I wanted to, was basically based on the rotation or the RPM of the engine. I was going to, the second potentiometer was going to adjust the length of the pulse duration. When the Hall sensor detects top dead center, it fires, and how long I would have left it on was going to be a function of that switch. But then I decided, well, there's really no point in having it fire any longer than a quarter of a turn or 90 degrees, because that's the length of the stroke on the solenoid. Beyond 90 degrees, the solenoid isn't contacting the piston. Anything less than 90 degrees is not going to be enough power to get it up to the speed I want. So I'm just leaving it. I'm basically calculating. What I'm doing is I'm calculating the number of milliseconds that the engine takes to turn over one revolution, and then to calculate the duration of the pulse, I just divide that number of milliseconds by 4, and that basically gives me that allows me to turn the solenoid on for 90 degrees based on the speed of the engine. So the only control I have hooked up right now is this first potentiometer, and that basically adjusts the threshold RPM at which the engine will fire. It does that by simply measuring the number of milliseconds it takes the flywheel to make, or the engine to make, one rev, and I can adjust then the number up or down, that when it hits that number by slowing down, when the time gets slow enough that it's that the time is above that threshold, it'll fire. And of course that puts it above the threshold, so it'll freewheel until the engine slows back down to that. But with the potentiometer I can adjust the speed of that, or adjust the amount of that time. So you'll see, I'll demonstrate it here, you'll see that I can adjust basically the speed of the engine by adjusting the value of the threshold. So we'll go ahead and start it up here. You'll see that it's got a little LED here that flashes when the engine fires. And I must have it sitting too slow. There we go. There you can see it firing on the LED. And then here you can see the engine running. Now as I turn this potentiometer, this is going to shorten, it's going to shorten the duration that it'll wait, so it's going to basically speed it up. There, a little faster. And I can actually speed it up to where it fires continuously. There you see it's firing continuously. Then by slowing it the other way, I can adjust it down to where it runs slower. And I can actually get it to run so slow and just stop. There's a little slower. A little slower. A little slower. A little slower. Slower still. slowing it down a little bit more. I'd like to get a little bit more of a kick when it hits. I could perhaps jump up the voltage to the solenoid. However, the solenoid does get warm even at this kind of speed after a while. I mean, it takes a while and it doesn't get really warm. I could probably bump the voltage up a little bit. At some point I may experiment with winding another solenoid, see if I can get one that's got more amp turns. It'll take more voltage and current and give me more of a kick. But I mean, for now, that actually runs pretty good, pretty slow. So anyway, thanks for watching.